Okay, so hey guys, and welcome back to another Axel 72 video. And in today's video, I'm going to be giving my prediction for the Justis Huni versus Fabio Wardley fight. And so if you are new around here and you haven't yet subscribed, please do so. Like the video if you do indeed like the video, and let's get straight into this. So this is for the WBA interim world heavyweight title. Is that a belt in which perhaps should be on the line? When you look at both their resumes, maybe not. I mean, they've both fought at a high level, and I'm not taking that away from either of them, but maybe not quite yet at a world title level or an interim world title level. And the WBA a few years ago were talking about trying to get rid of these interim belts and instead just ordering final eliminators, and that was encouraged by the boxing fans, and it was seen as a good thing because we don't want to always just be seeing titles thrown about for no reason, interim belts given for no reason when the champion is still actively fighting. And of course we have Usyk with a fight booked going on to fight Dubois, and we're now also seeing this interim title as well as I believe Char or Pulev getting thrown about for, I think that's for the WBA regular belt or WBC regular belt. Is one of the regular belts, which is just a weird fight. But yeah, now we're seeing these interim title fights creep back in again. I mean, we've just seen Caleb Plant last weekend go on fight for them, so it's a bit strange, and I don't think it's necessary for this fight because I don't feel like these guys should just meet anyway. These guys are building towards a world level. They're not quite at a world level yet. So the fact that they're being put in a position where arguably they can kind of, to an extent, skip the queue over some really top heavyweights. Like, I mean, just to name a couple, the likes of a Cabiel or, a Parker's in an interim position. Parker has fought everybody and deserves to be in an interim position, whereas, you just kind of look at both Justis Huni and Fabio Wardley and you just don't think they fought quite the same level of opposition as somebody if you are comparing it to the likes of a Joseph Parker, who will be in a similar type of position. So that's just my opinion on it. But of course, this is a homecoming stadium fight for Fabio Wardley. It's him getting this main event slot with Queensberry, and to be fair, Queensberry are showcasing a great event here realistically. Yes, it's another stadium fight, and yes, they seem to be happening quite frequently in the UK at the moment, and I'm not against them at all. I am a fan of them, and I think I do like a good stadium fight. I like the outdoor atmosphere and the football fans getting behind their own and everything like that. I feel like perhaps sometimes they force the stadium fight a little bit. They try and force the fans to get behind, one of their own, in which it's always branded as. And I don't necessarily know how big of a football fan base somebody like a Fabio Wardley has. But from what I've heard from Frank Warren talk about this fight, there's been 20,000 tickets sold for this. So, that's not too bad at all. And maybe it's sold a bit better than what I expected. But, the fact that they've been able to have this at the Ipswich Stadium does, of course, make me question the fact that Lee Wood was never able to have that fight at the City Ground, Nottingham Forest Stadium. Just something that made me question because, like I said, there has been such a frequency in stadium fights as of recent, so why did we never see Lee Wood be able to get that opportunity? I'm not entirely sure, and why wasn't Queensberry able to give that opportunity for him in his last fight? I'm not sure, but arguably that probably is, he's probably out of contention for getting a stadium fight at the moment, Lee Wood. But this isn't about him, this is about Fabio Wardley, and he's now in against an opponent in Justis Huni, who is stepping in on short notice, and in my opinion, I do feel like this could be a better opponent than Jarrell Miller. I feel like he's definitely more technical, and I feel like he's more skilled. I feel like Jarrell Miller is somebody who maybe may have offered a bit of a tougher test to Fabio Wardley just through the fact of the sheer size of him and the fact that he could walk through everybody and the fact that he would try and get into the head of Fabio Wardley and, inevitably never back down and never not be able to take punches. Yes, he got stopped against Dubois, but that was in the final few seconds and he didn't go down. He was just taking a lot of punishment, but inevitably he was still coming forward throughout most of the fight and was still walking through bombs from Daniel Dubois, in which not many fighters have been able to do throughout their careers. So I feel like he offers that, but something like a Justis Huni has been hurt in fights. He has, of course, had that fight versus Lorena where he got rocked early and late was bad. His legs completely went, and I mean, me personally, I thought that the fight, if Lorena would have jumped on him a bit more, he maybe would have been able to stop him. But, Lorena is an underrated fighter. He, of course, caused a lot of problems to Daniel Dubois. Of course, Dubois had some sort of leg injury that happened during that fight, and that was why he got dropped so many times. But that was a time in which Dubois was really getting questioned and he wasn't really living up to expectations, and Lorena was able to capitalize. So, at least Huni was able to stay on his feet just about throughout the entirety of that fight. But, he's gone away, he's been active, he's fought a couple times as of recent. He fought on the Optaya's last fight undercard against Potigier, and that was a really good performance from him. I feel like that was arguably the best I've seen him, and especially in the professional side of things. He looked fast, he looked sharp, he looked like he was not rushing his work, he looked well disciplined, he was up light on his feet, which was nice to see. When he was getting caught with shots against Lorena, he was a bit flat-footed and perhaps trying to force the power a bit more. Inevitably, he wasn't doing that in this last fight of his. And yes, the level of opposition was lower, so perhaps he was going in more confident and feeling like he could maybe experiment with a few new things that he'd been trying. But I feel like that definitely was a great fight, and I think he definitely is coming into this fight in a much better position than what he once was when he was going in to fight Lorena. I feel like he was being progressed at possibly a bit too quickly. I mean, we're seeing something like a Moses Atalma at the moment being progressed quite quickly and really living up to the expectations, but you can't expect every fight to be able to be progressed quickly and not have any kind of hiccups, not have any sort of problems. And I think Justis Huni's team has smartly taken a step back before, now going in for this fight against Fabio Wardley, which, to be fair, I give Huni credit for taking this. I think it is a very tough fight, and I think if the interim world heavyweight title wasn't on the line, I don't think he would have took it. But again, he's probably been paid well for it, so you've got to respect him for taking the fight, and he deserves any kind of paycheck he gets for taking it on short notice and realistically saving the event. And I mean, he has this amateur background, which of course Wardley doesn't have, but Wardley has beaten the likes of Frazer Clarke in his last fight, of course, avenging the draw and doing it in brutal fashion. And he's realistically had a really impressive rise, Wardley. Of course, it's been touched upon so much, his white collar background to then, his style being a bit more wild and a bit more aggressive and a bit less technical, but he's gone through the traditional route. He's won the British. He's, gone on to fight contenders for the British. Now he's progressing on from the British and going towards, now he's jumped a little bit, going straight into an interim world title fight, but still he has had an impressive rise, and it's really exciting to see what he offers. A lot of hype is around, like I've spoke about, something like a Moses Atalma at the moment, but I think Fabio Wardley, if he gets an emphatic victory against Justis Huni here, then he's arguably just as entertaining. I think a lot of people were forgetting that Fabio Wardley is a really powerful puncher when he did have the draw versus Frazer Clarke, because yes, he dropped him, and Frazer Clarke did well to survive getting dropped in that fight, but he just looked quite poor later on in the fight, Wardley. And again, like I say, I feel like that caused people to forget just how good Wardley can be, and like I say, just how dangerous he is in the early rounds. And now I feel like he has a time to showcase it again, and now he has a real opportunity to showcase it against a guy who has been hurt. I mean, to speak more about Wardley and his style, he's got brutal power. He kind of is an all or nothing type fighter. He will give his all throughout all the rounds, and he shows that he can dig deep, whether that's, into the later rounds where he's maybe not throwing the big enough, well, that bigger bombs because he's so tired, but, he will give all or nothing. He gets you on the ropes. He's explosive, especially early on, and he's got a destructive finisher type style, and he often starts with his overhands nicely. He can catch you off guard with the overhands, and he could definitely catch Huni off guard with that. If not, he sets it off his jab well. He's aggressive. I don't think he smothers his work too much unless he's really tired. I don't think he smothers it that much, which is, quite refreshing to see, to be honest. I think, of course, he's wild. He's the less technical out of the two, which I think is obvious. I think he can definitely overcommit. He's used his wide shots, and like I say, he does lose that snap in his punches later on, which can be something that could definitely play into Huni's favour if he can survive the first few rounds against him. He has minimal defensive movement, and he does stand straight on, so if somebody like a Huni can get on the tips of his toes and can get moving around, maybe he could tire out Wardley and maybe he could slow him down. So, of course, Huni, he's on now fighting on a weekend with Optai, who's, of course, fighting, defending his title. So it's definitely an Australian-based weekend, an Australian takeover in which Matchroom have been branding it with two of their best Australian fighters there. And, Matchroom are lacking in heavyweight success, heavyweight big names. You look around, I mean, AJ, God knows what's happening with him at the moment. He's been offered to fight Jared Anderson and Dillian White, but I don't really know how much people actually care about that. And then, other than that, the heavyweight scene with Matchroom isn't amazing. They've got Terry Moana, who's coming up, who looks good. Of course, they've got Huni as well. But other than that, they haven't realistically got a crazily big stable. They've got a couple young guys with Pat Brown, and, they're not bad, but they're just not quite at the level to be able to, just yet, to be able to really get their name out there. And it's nothing like the Queensbury heavyweights, in which, Queensbury have some amazing names at the moment. And so something like a Justis Huni is really important for Matchroom's success realistically. And so, like I say, it's another reason why I'm surprised to see him be put in on short notice against a Fabio Wardley. But like I mentioned, I think Huni has got fast hands. He is a much more controlled puncher. He goes to the body nicely himself. I feel like they both do. He's, I think, channeling his power a bit more and setting his shots up a bit nicer than what he once did. And I think it's delivering more knockouts and making him look a bit more destructive. I think he is gaining confidence. I think he definitely is a confidence fighter. I think maybe coming in as the away fighter here for the first time and really having the fans against him perhaps could cause a problem for him. I think his shot selection on the front foot is very good. I think he can fight at a mid-range better, and I think he can fight in close just as good. He's got a strong jab himself. I think Wardley's got a strong jab, but often, throughout the rounds, he can forget that more and more. I think, of course, Huni has got rocked in the past, and I think he definitely does cover up when he's hurt and can be kind of pushed about, and perhaps even rely on his head movement a bit, which his reflexes and his head movement isn't amazing, so he can definitely get caught when he's trying to do that. And I think he can also get too comfortable. He got caught via that shot from Lorena in the last round when he was just too comfortable waiting in range and loading up on his shots a bit too much, and like I say, being a bit too flat-footed, being too relaxed, and that's when he got caught. Somebody like a Fabio Wardley, even if his snap isn't there into the later rounds, if he can see an opportunity into later rounds and he is tiring and going back onto the ropes, he could still probably land a big shot that perhaps could stun Justis Huni and even be able to possibly get a late knockout. I wouldn't bet on it, but perhaps that could still happen. Who do I think is going to win? I think that Fabio Wardley is going to be able to win via TKO in round 4. I think it is going to be a destructive display where Huni is going to start off light on his feet, but there is going to be one moment in which Wardley catches Huni with a big overhand, and that's just going to start the downfall early on. I don't think Huni's feet are going to be able to stay under him. I think Wardley's power is much more so than that of Lorena, and I also think he's going to be too destructive of a finisher, and I think it is going to be an impressive night's work win in front of the home crowd for Fabio Wardley. And then who he goes on to fight next, I mean, of course, everybody's talking about Atama at the moment. I think a Wardley Atama would be an amazing fight, but I think that Queensberry may not want to be, willing to put two of their guys against each other, especially at this point in both their careers. But perhaps it might happen. If not, something like a Zhang, he's in the opposite end of his career, maybe got one or two big fights left. But to be fair, Zhang is similar to that of Fabio Wardley in the fact of he is kind of only realistically a threat in the early rounds and does really tire later on. So that could be a good fight. Possibly the Jerome Miller fight could still happen. I am wondering if, due to the antics in which Miller offered in that press conference in which they did, if perhaps that led to him getting cut out, because there was talks of him being injured, but I don't really think there was actually any proof or anything, so I don't know why he pulled out the fight without, any evidence, unless it's been shown and I just haven't seen it. So maybe that's why he got pulled from the fight. If not, I'd still be willing to see the fight happen. If not, Smolek and Nikoli could be a good fight as well. He's been calling out most names in the heavyweight division, same with that of a Riakporhe. I feel like they could be both good fights as well. And so yeah, that is it for today's video. I hope you did enjoy. Like the video if you do indeed, or did indeed like the video. Subscribe if you're new, and thanks for watching.